Hey guys, welcome back to Tough Love with Dr. John O'Connor. Here I got my wingman, Matt. What's up, brother? Today we're going to be talking about disruption in what we do in physical medicine and how we are trying to change how people approach and look at healthcare in the physical medicine world. Let's get started.
Great. It's good to be here, Doc. Appreciate you having me back. Always an honor. So I want you to get right into it, dig deep on what disruptions even are. Sometimes could be physically, mentally, emotionally.
For us, the disruption, I think, that is just, blaring and screaming at you is our core four, right? So we have spent a huge amount of time, effort, and money putting out to local media and now international media and drawing national attention with regards to our core four sciences. So our pulsed electromagnetic field therapy, our class 4 laser, our local cryotherapy, and of course our shockwave or acoustic sound wave therapy. It's been a game changer. And when we say disruption, when we look in the physical medicine space, you have excellent, athletic, educated physical medicine experts showing movement patterns. That is absolutely quintessential and a necessity to get people back to health, keeping them moving and performing and doing things they want to do and love. But the reality is just like I was talking with Jackson about from Incrediware, is we want to disrupt the person that's not getting those results doing that. And when we say disrupt the person, meaning is it pain? And then it's becoming a mental thing because now they're afraid to do stuff.
Right.
And then what can we do to disrupt those thought patterns that then, because they're feeling a physical difference, just like we're going to do the single leg challenge with the Incrediware leg sleeve, is they need to see it and feel it, right? And probably one of the most amazing things that we saw in the last 24 hours, and we're always seeing amazing breakthroughs in our clinical practice, was what we did with one of our patients the other day, where I was watching him go through some physical movements, and I saw all the restriction in his hips. And then Christian was looking at him and saying, "Doc, he's so locked up in his hips." And I said, "You know what? We're so used to going to point of pain. But when I was in Florida with Martin, who was, the chief science officer for EMS, he was very funny in his accent. He goes, when I look at my professional soccer players, sometimes I look to the opposite side of pain, or I'll work in and around the area and have an amazing breakthrough."
Right.
So for me, it was the epiphany to say, you know what? Let me just get into those adductors. Let me get into the inner thigh, the outer thigh. And as you know, it was a pretty interesting moment for the patient, because he was like, "Wow, you're getting a little close to the business here."
Yeah.
And and it was extremely painful for him. And literally, he went from being at 60%, 65% improvement and walked in 95%. And so if someone asked me, whether it's disrupting beliefs or disrupting pain patterns, we want to be different, right? We want to have that balance, and every one of our patients in some way, form, want to be active.
Right.
They want to get back to that. He was a guy that, you talk about an amazing story when Kyle, and I'm not going to use his last name because of HIPAA, but, being funny, when he came to me, I will never forget this. I got sent a video by his personal trainer, and he was working out and he couldn't stop. Like physically couldn't stop. He had to go into a hedgerow, and his neurology, something was going on. There was a disconnect and he couldn't stop. And so he was so tough and wanted to be an athlete, and he was, a triathleter at the time. And so she was at a loss. She's like, this guy's going to hurt himself. He has to crash into things. He can't just put the brakes on and stop. Yeah. So, I run him through a detailed exam. I take an x-ray, and I have never seen a person that athletic have a spine with a full on, his segments were completely looked like it was going to fall off. And he's somewhat in the healthcare space, maybe does medical sales, had a friend, and everybody's got a friend. And I said to him, I go, "Hey, with friends like that, you don't need enemies, because I really think you could be paralyzed." And coming from somebody that was paralyzed, right. I was like,
absolutely.
And he looked at me, and I showed him the x-ray, and then I sent it out to 3 radiologists, and they were like, "Wow, good catch. He's going to need something." He ultimately had a multi-level fusion, and he was, 5 years later, completely pain-free for 5 years. The doctor did a wonderful job, back to doing, workouts and back to living his best life. And I realized now he's had a surgery. So now we're thinking about, hey, core 4, because this guy's had this fusion, he's not a candidate for some of the techniques that we would normally offer. And then I started thinking, you know what? I want to be known at our facilities as disruptors.
Yeah.
That instead of being that traditional right away, the doctor's going to say, okay, let's do physical therapy, conservative physical therapy for 4 weeks. Let's get an MRI. Let's do an x-ray. You know, he felt amazing. There was no trauma. We did an x-ray. Everything looked like it was intact.
Right. And I think the biggest lesson what you just said, Doc, is sometimes disruption is a good thing.
Oh, 100%. You know, and I was blown away because of the trust patients have now. And that when we are working on, different patients, and we'll bring it to them and we'll say, hey, listen, this is what we would do for this. And knowing that they're traditional chiropractic patient, a physical therapy patient, and they trust us, and then they get the results, to me is not only rewarding and makes you feel good about what you're doing, but it also shows you the importance that education is disruption. You know, because when you put a person in a situation that they don't know and they just go by what they were told, and so many times, God knows, so many times just take they take the word for someone else, and they don't do any research, they don't read. And when we're showing them and they're looking up on the screens and they're seeing all the documentation, and we're saying, then they understand. We're like, and by the way, we may have not encouraged or even educated that person for 90 days, and finally, like, I'm really not getting better. I'm going to so-and-so, coming here. And we said, you know what? Maybe it's time we have the conversation.
Right.
And I just have to say, like, for me, that's been something that's just been so rewarding. We had two of the docs from the other facility in on Friday, and they were shadowing us and kind of seeing what we do. And they realized, they're like, wow, like the amount of listening.
It's a well-oiled machine all around.
Yeah. And not forget it that, of course it's a business, but not even that. Letting a doctor listen to another doctor speak when a patient's opening up and they're in pain, they're showing that vulnerable side, and you're listening to them and you're saying, hey, wow, you tried chiropractic, you tried acupuncture, you tried injections, you tried this, you didn't get relief. You're super active, you look fantastic. Why don't we try this? And, again, when you're going against that normalcy or status quo, we are a disruptor in that, because we're explaining machines to them. And for the one patient, it was pretty funny, because most people will take better care than their animals than they will themselves.
Absolutely.
And here she had a $60,000 or $70,000 machine at home that she could have been using on herself, and yet she's going all over the place. I said, well, I would use that every day.
Right.
And and if you're not going to use mine and as prescribed, I'm like, you're blessed to have this at home.
Right.
And it was funny looking at her. She was like, yeah, wow, I should use that. I was like, yeah, you should.
No, absolutely. And it's a lot of patients too. The one patient you were mentioning with the level 3 fusion, and he's been only 4 treatments in to his 6 treatment
A remarkable
plan.
improvement. Yeah.
And he wasn't a firm believer at first. He was a little sore after, but finally when you dug deep kind of around the problem area, more towards the groin, it was night and day. He's a firm believer in everything now. And when it comes to, educating our patients, some people might believe it's more on the selling aspect. We're not here to sell. We're here to help people get better.
Educate.
Right?
Absolutely.
So to us, education is so vital and important, to where we won't let patients see any practitioner in our clinics unless they read over certain articles we send them prior to their visit.
Absolutely.
To get educated more on it before coming to see you.
It's funny. In the recent weeks, and actually a little earlier today, we had the unbelievable opportunity to interview Jackson Corley, the founder of Incrediware, and hearing him talk about his practice. And in 2008, he had a remarkable accident that left him virtually paralyzed, right? He was in a walker for months upon months and had a high volume practice like myself. And I could literally feel like we were paralleling each other's lives. And seeing what he was talking about and how he came across the fabric with his son's stinky hockey shoes. And I was laughing. I was like, how funny. And then it was a breakthrough.
Right.
And so many times in science or in innovation, it's like you're looking at one thing and you discover something else. But probably the biggest thing and the energy in the conversation that I loved was when he talked about helping people. And what I realized is why I'm okay with it, and my team, and educating my team, the importance of being a disruptor in the pain world, is it's the same thing. They're on the merry-go-round of the same treatments, the same shots, the same things over and over again.
The same people.
And so to me, if we can offer something different and give hope and give them back activity, much like I experienced myself, I tell people all the time that this journey for me is I'm living it. I'm back to working out. Like, yeah, are there imbalances? Are there things I have going on? Absolutely. But when you're talking about a month, 2 months, 3 months, 6 months that I couldn't walk, I couldn't move, I couldn't touch my toe to 2 days sore, I wake up and put my feet on the ground in the morning, and I am so grateful to know that I'm like 2 days and I'm better. That's muscle soreness. That's me being a 50-year-old athlete that's sore from training hard. And, I have to attribute that success to, the core 4 products that we use on a daily basis, whether it's the cryoscience on Fridays and I'm doing full cryo, or I'm doing the PEMF every morning, or the Mark Pro, or the IncrediWear fabric, or the Class 4 laser. I truly believe that, watching the science work, it's not a belief. I know how debilitated I was. I know when I looked at those surgeons that were friends that were like, hey, maybe it's time to start thinking about it. Now they see me, they're like, can I have what you're having? Right. And
it speaks for itself.
It speaks for itself. Absolutely. And so to me, and obviously a podcast wouldn't happen without me talking about Rob Gill.
Right.
And Rob's big push was disruption in AAU, right?
Absolutely.
Because he thought that there was so much, I don't want to say crime and corruption, but with my son playing high level baseball now down at IMG, you can see that there's tunnels and funnels for success. And there's always going to be nepotism. Like, this trainer trains this kid and this trainer trains this kid, and they get pulled in, they create a team, and then somebody funds the team. But when you put somebody in a situation where you can create an overall atmosphere that everybody's getting better.
One straight path, no stops.
I think it's an absolute game changer. And so I was kind of inspired with today's podcast to say, you know what? I like the word disruption. I like that when I run into practitioners who are like, yeah, man, you're doing all those wild things. I'm like, yeah, I am. It's pretty awesome.
Absolutely. And, just really fueling off you, Doc. Just hearing the word disruption, honestly, I get the chills as we treat patients. It's amazing. So the most recent patient, that we brought in, she did a 6-pack of the Core 4. Not really confident in everything she tried. She wanted to get back to the pickleball court. Within 2 sessions, back to playing pickleball, 0 pain. She didn't realize it until we asked the right questions. She's like, you know what? I finally played pickleball. Been over 6 months. My shoulder felt amazing. I didn't feel anything.
So now I'm gonna interrupt you for a second. I think even more important to really put the magnitude of the statement you're conveying is she's a candidate for bilateral shoulder replacement. And I had said to her, and she was a tough patient education. We never say a patient sale. We were like, because everything in 1990 something, she had a microdiscectomy. She had a massive foot surgery that she had a non-union formation where it didn't completely heal. She's got some knee issues. She's got some hip issues post her hip replacement, like post-surgical soreness. And, so we were going through it. I was like, you're going to be an amazing story if what I think is going to happen is going to happen. And, I want to disrupt your mindset because you're looking at it as, and this is a patient that went to South America to do stem cells. So I know she's an outside the box thinker, right? So she did the stem cell. And not only did she feel so much better after the first visit, of course, and she loved that we aligned her toes and wrapped her ankle to make her foot straight. And she was like, that was easy. And I laughed. I said, she's like, you didn't have to do that. I said, it's funny. If I had $1 for every time I did something that I didn't have to do in patient care, I probably would have retired at 40, right? And, you want people to feel good.
Right.
You want to be done with your day and smile and embrace the fact that you helped people feel better. And pain is such a debilitating, exhausting process and emotion to have to wear, right? That you hear so many people like, oh, I'm so sick of this. I'm so tired. Absolutely. The alternative is far worse. And, and again, hearing somebody say being grateful and that attitude of gratitude, you can't be miserable and grateful at the same time. It's impossible.
And patient this morning was in tears explaining to us how she's coming with her husband tomorrow, who's coming in to see us for treatment. And just hearing that, it
was blown away, right? She got deep. And I really, to be honest with you, I was remiss that, she needed a hug. And I don't know where I was at. I was mentally off.
And that's her disruption. Her time in our clinic is her me time.
100%.
So her recommending, referring her husband, that goes a long way.
You saw that. And I laughed because what I was thinking was, wow, this is personal. Because people don't realize how the family unit, if somebody is in pain everybody's in pain.
Correct.
If somebody's hurting, you know, everybody is hurting.
Everyone suffers.
And, you know, if you cannot, you know, get them settled and get them situated, you know, and get them out of pain, it's a major issue. And, you know, what I saw was, and I've been hearing about her managing and like keeping everything together. If something was broken, she fixes it at home, physically, mentally, you know, and you have to have respect for that because she's not quitting. She's embracing, she's embracing the challenge to say, listen, I'm amazed with what you're doing with these people and I want you to experience that. And I think it's a great thing to have for him.
Right.
And I was like blown away. You know, what a compliment. You know, what a wonderful opportunity to, you know, be able to help people in such a way that we can take them to that next level. And I have to say that is something that I'm excited to say, the disruption in what we do.
Absolutely.
Because I loved, and just like I said, you know, talking to Jackson Corley, another chiropractor, we love putting our hands on people. And, you know, there's something to be said about, you know, the healing touch, but you know what, there's limitations. And when people are at that point and you can kind of balance it where it's a combination of physical therapy, science, mental coaching, you know, your attitude, right? Like she had said, she goes, it's amazing. When he's out, he's perfect. And when he gets home, he's a bear.
He almost shuts off.
And, you know, and that's something that we're like, you know what, that's going to be what we want to disrupt for her. Right. So so what he is all the time. And that I believe that if he knows the patterns, like we saw with Tom, God bless him, he just got married. We wish him many years of health and happiness. And there was a guy that wasn't 100% all in. Right. And, you know, he was still going for surgical consults. And here he is. We watched him get out of the chair and I almost tackled him in the office because he literally got up in a perfect squat. He does his movements. He follows all these amazing physios like Andrew Locke and all these guys out there and getting great results. And I said to him, I go, you know, what's the difference now? And he's like, you know what? I was so afraid and I just was broken. And I laugh and I'm like, I don't know whether disruption was the word of the day or unbroken. He felt, and he said, I just feel unbroken. And, you know, and getting married was such an awesome experience this weekend.
It was.
And, you know, being on my feet and having the best time. And it was kind of surreal. And I'm just grateful.
Yeah.
And to me, that's bigger than healthcare. That's bigger than velocity. Helping people get back to be able to feel that, you know, sensation, that warmth, that human touch, to go do stuff, to not be afraid of everything, to, oh, I'm going to hurt today, I'm going to do this and that.
From not being able to walk to dancing all night at your wedding.
And hearing him qualifying it, like him knowing now. Right. You heard him talking about it. Like, and you know, and Christian spends a lot of time with him. And he said something, and, you know, people always laugh, like, I hear everything. I may pretend like I don't hear anything, but I hear everything. You do. You know? And I was chuckling because he said something that was really profound to me. And he goes, you know, I can't believe how much I was afraid to do. Yeah. And now, like, if there's a little ache, I'm like, oh, I'm just going to get up and move around. It's gone. But that thought the mind takes, and how the mind can be so powerful or so debilitating, that he goes, you know, in years and months and days past, if I got any type of ache right away, I'm going down. Yeah. Right. Yeah. And he's like, I felt like my own fight commentator, and that I was immediately going to go down and be knocked out. And I said to him, I go, you know, what's funny? I was there and I was petrified of everything. And the greatest triumph I had for me was literally picking up heavy things again and grabbing them and being like, I'm powerful. I'm fine. I'm getting better by the week and month.
Disruption.
And you know, and I had to disrupt that pain, fear, woe is me thing. Right. And I have to laugh. For me, if you look back at my Instagram, my Facebook, I think I started on Facebook posting probably a decade ago. It was always win the day. It was always dig deep. And I think everybody
sticks with you.
I think that our mission, and again, I loved what, you know, the founder of Incredible was saying earlier on our podcast, is we have a job. And if you
have
one
job only.
Well, we got a couple jobs, but in this sense, we have a very important job. Yeah. And what that is that if you can motivate people to work towards their better version of themselves. And that means physical, mental, spiritual. And they embody that and they embrace that challenge and they realize that, hey, you know what? Some days are going to suck, but it could be the weather. It could be the loss of a pet or a sick loved one, or, you know, your team lost. The reality is it makes you appreciate it's okay.
Yeah.
It makes you appreciate when you have an amazing day.
Right.
And that was like hearing, you know, again, like hearing Jackson say that earlier, it makes you appreciate that. And that's what always goes back to like gratitude and your rituals and routines. And
it's just like Ed Milet, right? The power of one. Takes one good day to overlook 10 other bad days.
100%. And so I really believe that, you know, the message of today's podcast, and I love these ones where we can get up here and we just really rap and just be free, is it is so important to be appreciative of the opportunities we're given for us. Like I said, I mean, you know, huge shout out to my boy Rudy Alfonso down in Miami. You know, he has been preaching about PEMF and technology. We had other technologies and he drew me into it. And I went in, you know, obviously you've been around me long enough. Like when I go in, I go all in. And I was absolutely blown away with how well it worked for me. And I kept thinking as I was reading all these books during my challenges that I've been through that, wow, I'm the only one not getting better.
Yeah.
And like, and then I started laughing because when you're so hard on yourself and you want to be great, and you know, we're talking about these incredible companies, these Mark Pro companies, which that's our next big guest.
Yeah.
They deal with the elite.
Right.
And hearing them talk about looking at Kobe or whoever the modern Kobe is, LeBron James, and like he said, they don't give anything away for free.
And that's one thing. We treat every one of our patients like they are elite.
Yeah.
There's nobody important. That's better than the next. It's the same way. Might be treating different, but we always treat them as elite people or athletes.
It's important. You know, I think that message always has to be about that. I think they, you know, especially God knows, I mean, you know, being a small company, we're self-insured, you know, and going to the doctor, you know, regardless if we know them or not, you're basically self-funding your healthcare.
Yeah.
And so I always tell people, choose wisely. If you're going to self-fund your healthcare or anything you're doing in life, wouldn't you want the best or or what, you know, whatever the best is you can afford?
Right.
Because you only get one body and you only get one life. So it's you always hear me going back to that. And, you know, and it's that one thing, like, you know, we always like to, you know, note and cite and say, hey, you know, and Milet ran with that and crushed it, you know, power of one more, one more phone call, one more rep, one more push up, you know, but the reality is, you know, that is what it's all about. And so many people, in one of the chapters in his book, he was talking about the piñata of life. And you don't realize that most people don't swing at a piñata and it blows open the first time. It's like the waves crashing on the beach and you hit it and you hit it and you hit it. And finally the piñata busts open.
Be repetitive.
Right? And for me, the consistency that I've had and what I'm breaking through and making the gains now is because I haven't been giving up on those rituals and routines.
No.
And I loved hearing, you know, the more successful the person, I immediately want to lock in and say, hey, tell me about your rituals and routines.
Yeah.
And, you know, it's not so much for the listener because I love that the podcasters that are out there that I love to listen to are remarkably successful. And I want to learn from them.
And they don't just wake up and there they are.
No, they're picking it from people.
Ground zero.
No, they start ground zero. And what do they all say? What's the common ground that they keep saying? Hey, man, I had a guy on today. I had Inky Johnson on today. I had Eric Thomas, or I had on Sean Casey.
Learning every day.
And they learned something that day that they took home to them.
Yeah.
And I think that is something that I'm so excited about. Again, today's about disruption. Like when our community, and as we're about to launch our first, health summit for our core 4 sciences. I think we're going to be November 11th on Saturday, all day event.
Yes.
And, that's going to be huge. I mean, we have a 15,000 square foot facility. We're going to be bringing doctors in from all over the state and possibly all over the country.
And we're fortunate enough to have that space.
Yes.
A lot of physicians in this country do not take advantage of it. I promise you it will be worth it. Yeah, no, 100%. And we're so excited to get that out to the audience. I mean, Clean Media has been, instrumental, and we're about to launch our Facebook group. It's a private group, and, we'll be coaching. And again, it's about disruption, right? Because so many times I've been,
approached by these different coaches, and they make these promises. And, as an athlete, and as my son going through the recruiting process right now, I'm like, hey, listen, I don't want you to go to a school where you feel like you have a car salesman guy coming at you, and I never want to be coming across like that. And in the coaching that we do, I want it to feel like what, DJ and I were talking about a few weeks ago is like it's Navy SEALs. It's stuff that either you're going to be a chiropractor or you're going to be a physical therapist, accountant, life skills that you can translate and utilize in your friend groups, in your workout groups, in your relationships, in your home life, in your dealing with family.
Yeah.
I think it's so important. So in our coaching platform, again, another point of disruption for us is teaching everybody that the huge practice for us, this is obviously a huge location. I don't know if I'd recommend this. I think that what we're doing now is innovative, and we're thinking outside the box to bring something to the clinical providers out there. But I have to tell you, I love being in that smaller location. And it's more an intimate setting. I said this the other day.
Oh, for sure.
Even here in Jackson State, when he was Dr. Jackson Corley, seeing 200 patients a day, I loved that we've done that we've done that for a couple of years in our practice, but I'd say I would never want that back. Mm-hmm. It's not something I could look back and say it was fun, but I love having time with the patients. I love being able to lock in like this. And the three of us are working on a patient. We all get a little pearl of feedback.
You dig deeper. It's not come in, get adjusted, and leave.
And you
come
go
in, you treat, you talk, you dig deep of what's going on in their lives, let alone physically.
Absolutely. So I think, again, the message of today's podcast is, everybody should take a look. And if they were going to take notes and they're driving in their car listening to this right now, or they're working out, is what can you do in your life that you could put the word disruption in for a positive effect, a positive change in your life.
Right.
And for us, our disruption was for Velocity Performance and Sports Rehab was, we're dropping the R3 Lounge, which is going to be recovery, recovery repeat. And we're so excited for that to go at our field facility. But for us, it was the core four.
Yeah.
And, to the point where we're down in Florida, we're going out to Texas. We have a trip to Poland coming up. And, I have to tell you that for me, it's been like a clinical rebirth. Like I love going to work and talking to people. We have a consult coming in next week. Amazing story. He's an older gentleman at the gym, very fit, had a headache and pressure behind his ear, wound up being a malignant tumor. Mm-hmm. And when they did, neurosurgeon removed it, and they said, unfortunately, we were in there and, you had a complete, it's gone. You're 100% cancer free. Of course, there always comes to the but, but you're going to have some neurological issues. You're going to have some tingling, you have some stuff, and, change of weather and temperature. And I saw him the other day, and I had the opportunity to talk to him, and he knows that, a little older, he doesn't know what the science is. He must be seeing it on the, on the screens of the gym. And I said to him, listen, I'm going to tell you the same thing I told one of our patients with the complex, the failed cervical fusion, where the 8-level fusion had to be taken out in the low back. And that was a horror story, right? I mean, there's a man that is a wonderful human that every day in his life, for the rest of his life, he's in 8 out of 10 pain on a good day and 20 out of pain every other day.
Yeah.
And he's a happy human, even though he's dealing with pain, because he's like, you know what? I have to get through it. My grandkids need me and they love me. My wife needs me and loves me. My family, and I'm sitting there, I'm like, we got to bottle that guy up and be able to bring that into people.
Without a doubt.
Just like, we were talking about with the other podcast, somebody gets an ache, a pain, I think, I was listening to Inky Johnson this morning. He said something hysterical. He literally almost died on the table, ruptured his subclavian artery. I was listening to the podcast. I was sending it over to my son this morning, and I was listening to it again. And it was like the podcast that stopped the internet. It said it was like 30 minutes of just wow, right? And he made a tackle against one of the military academies, and he ruptured his subclavian artery, had no idea, and he had complete paralysis of his arm. They had to do a massive surgery. And he was so dedicated to his team. He literally put on the sleeve and the cast, and he duct taped his arm or something like that to it, and got in the sprinting pits with the guys and ran with them and said, hey, look, I may never play again, but I promised you one thing when I got here. I'll be here every step of
ride
the way.
with you.
And,
Yeah.
and it was amazing to me because I was like, you know what? That's what we have to do better. Our disruption that we want to do in healthcare or anything we do is we see somebody that's in pain or challenged, say hello.
Yeah.
Offer an
Introduce
encouraging
yourself.
word, introduce yourself.
Exactly. We're here.
And you're not going to inspire everybody.
Right.
But, like today in the
Takes
gym,
one.
I saw somebody jump on the treadmill that one of our patients
Yeah.
and was about to do something. And we started to get into a funny conversation because he's doing so well and he's back running. And I looked at his shoes and he had on like workout shoes, not running shoes.
Yeah.
And I looked over and I was like, hey, Chris, think that's a good idea? I know you're feeling good, but I'm feeling great, obviously. And he looked at the shoes and said, but would you run at those if we were at Ryder and you were running D1? He goes, oh no. I said, how about the elliptical up there, do some sprint intervals and whatnot? He looked at me and I laughed. I'm in the middle of my workout.
5 minutes later, you look up.
And he's up on the
top
elliptical
rope.
and he goes, Doc, I can't believe you took the time out of your workout to disrupt your own workout to pay attention to me. I said, well, isn't that what it's all about?
Disruption.
It's like, disruption for positivity,
Yeah,
right?
And that's, all the listeners out there, Doc, that's the biggest thing, guys, is you don't have to always come see us if you're 10 out of 10 pain. Search for that good disruption. Send us a DM on Instagram, Dr. John O'Connor, Velocity Performance. Ask us about our Core 4 sciences. We will send you articles. You can schedule your own phone calls with our patient education specialists. Just trust the process, find that good disruption.
Love it. Anyway, guys, absolutely fantastic today. Like I said, I think today was more of a feel-good podcast. It was about understanding that, there's so many different levels of pain. People are struggling with stuff. Be a role model. Be positive, right? I've had a couple kids right now that I'm just sharing podcasts with. I know I harass my guys to do all my social media at the ass crack of dawn, sending them stuff, and we go back and forth. But the reality is that I don't care what age, everybody's going to have bad days. Everybody's going to be challenged. It's so important to just have forward momentum and feel good and take a moment in every day to think about what you could be grateful for.
Right.
And I think if you do that, that's part of your ritual routines. And I know when I put my feet on the floor every day, or whether I'm taking, if I'm kneeling to pray, I try my best in those moments to think about what are 5 things and different every day that I could be grateful for. So anyway, thank you so much for joining us today on the Tough Love Podcast. Absolute blast as always. Oh, do it
Always
again.
a pleasure.
Yeah.
Yep.
Absolute blast today on Tough Love Podcast. Thank you so much for joining us. Again, today was about disruption and just overcoming adversity and creating new opportunities and looking at stuff in a different perspective. Just not quitting. Just keep going, right? No doesn't mean no, in advancing in anything in life. You're going to hit obstacles, you're going to hit challenges, and the object is keep going forward, keep moving, keep going, and don't stop till you get to where you go. And then when you get there, inspire someone else to do the same thing. We'll see you next week. Thank you so much for joining us. Follow us on Instagram or other social media platforms, and we look forward to being with you guys again soon.